A video of a road trip around South Florida. From Orlando, we went south to Sarasota, then to Naples, and finally down to Key West. Took a boat to the Dry Tortugas, drove back up to Miami Beach, back up to Orlando, and then the Kennedy Space Center before returning home. We left Montreal at sunset. From Orlando, we drove south to the Everglades with a brief stop at Sarasota. At Sarasota, we visited a resort that had an interesting wildlife population, including alligators and birds. The birds included a limping sandhill crane. At times, the crane's inner eyelid was visible. The Everglades are a vast wetland ecosystem that covers much of south central Florida, and airboats are an excellent way to get into the Everglades, so we took one of the many available airboat rides.
Well, guys, welcome to the Everglades.
Yeah, is it really? But no, but you're a really good driver.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
There are two little.
I've only been doing it for about 40 years.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
That right there, folks, is a baby gator eating machine. That thing will wipe out a pod of baby gators in a matter of about 5 minutes.
Oh, look at that.
There we go, doing a flyby. He's like, look at me, look at me.
Unfortunately, human activity has dramatically altered the Everglades, and as a result, the size of the Everglades has decreased dramatically. A walk down the Big Cypress Bend boardwalk provides an excellent way to view some of the Everglades flora and fauna, including giant cypress trees, nesting eagles, and alligators.
You see it?
Yes. Can you tell?
Yeah. I can see the mother. Yeah.
Oh, just. That's fine. I didn't even see that until it moved its wings. I saw the one just in the net.
The drive through the Everglades on the Tamiami Trail offers excellent views of birds and gators. There were hawks, cormorants, and American black vultures in trees and feeding. The Oasis Visitor Center in the Big Cypress National Preserve is on a waterway with lots of alligators and cormorants. The cormorants were very successful in fishing for catfish, although they had difficulty in swallowing their catches. Once out of the Everglades near Homestead, the countryside is heavily cultivated with truck gardens and ornamental plants predominating. The Homestead Air Reserve Base has some aircraft mounted on static display. The drive down the Florida Keys on the Overseas Highway to Key West to catch the ferry to the Dry Tortugas was very interesting under sunny skies. There are many giant animal sculptures and boat dealers along the Overseas Highway. Our progress along the highway was stalled, as it was blocked by a crew unsuccessfully trying to deliver a swimming pool. We got up early in the morning to drive to Key West and catch the Yankee Freedom high-speed catamaran ferry for a day trip to visit the Dry Tortugas and Fort Jefferson. The Yankee Freedom carries about 150 passengers on the 2.5-hour trip across the 70 miles of open water from Key West to the Dry Tortugas. Key West is a frequent stop for giant Carnival cruise ships. During the 2.5-hour trip to the Dry Tortugas, we first had breakfast and then settled in. It was a beautiful day with fairly calm seas. We passed by a pod of dolphins. We were buzzed by a Navy F-5 fighter jet flying in one of the air combat maneuvering ranges near Key West. The Dry Tortugas were discovered by Ponce de Leon in 1513. They were named Dry to indicate to mariners that the islands lacked fresh water. Nearing Fort Jefferson, we were passed by a seaplane flying overhead while ferrying tourists from Key West to Fort Jefferson. The seaplane takes about 40 minutes, twice the 2.5 hours of the ferry, but at about twice the cost. Fort Jefferson is a massive hexagonal 420 heavy gun coastal fortress whose construction on Garden Key started in 1846, but it was never fully finished. It is the largest masonry structure in the Americas, being composed of over 16 million bricks. The purpose of the fort was to help the U.S. control shipping lanes in the Gulf of Mexico. Fort Jefferson's peak military population was 1,700 during the Civil War, but its military use ended in 1888 due to advances in shipboard artillery, the effects of frequent hurricanes, and the difficulty of living in its tropical disease environment. Nearby Bush Key was abuzz with nesting birds. During our 4.5 hours at Fort Jefferson, the tourist seaplane from Key West landed and took off several times. Apart from day trips, it is possible to camp overnight at Fort Jefferson. Unlike most attractions in North America, visitors can freely wander about Fort Jefferson without a guide, despite the lack of safety rails and other security measures on the fort. The fort has not been turned into a safety-first environment, which makes exploring the fort an interesting experience. While the fort was designed for 420 heavy guns, there were only a couple on site today. The fort's largest guns, known as 15-inch Rodman smoothbores, weigh 25 tons apiece. With a crew of 7 men, they could fire a 432-pound projectile a distance of 3 miles. Fort Jefferson is surrounded by a moat that serves to both protect the external walls of Fort Jefferson from heavy surf action that could destroy the fort, and to make it difficult for an attacker to quickly reach the fort's walls while keeping their black powder dry. We went snorkeling at the beach on the north side of the fort and then passed through the pylons of the nearby coal dock ruins. The most interesting part of the snorkeling was seeing a great blue heron catch, swallow a fish, and then wash it down with a drink of seawater. We walked around the moat wall on the north and west side of the fort. This section of moat wall protects the external walls of Fort Jefferson from heavy surf action. The moat wall here passes by the section of the fort walls where the brick cladding is sloughing off. Work is currently underway to repair the affected sections of the walls. Since the moat wall is so low to the water, it is easy to see the sea life up against it. The 2.5-hour return trip to Key West was uneventful. Once back at Key West, we could see that the large Carnival Ecstasy cruise ship had been replaced by the even larger Carnival Magic cruise ship. We had just enough time for supper before the sunset action started at Key West, with a large number of crowded sailing ships heading out for the sunset. The seawall on the west side of Key West was crowded with tourists there to see the sunset. There were so many that it was difficult to find a place to stand and actually see the sunset. The sunset's beauty was accentuated by sailing ships in the distance. All in all, it was an amazing spectacle. Once the sun dipped below the horizon, darkness swiftly fell. The drive into Miami Beach was exciting due to the aggressive driving that we encountered. In fact, we witnessed a fatal road accident and narrowly avoided a serious accident ourselves when a driver cut us off. The Port of Miami is known as the cruise ship capital of the world, but unfortunately there was only one cruise ship alongside. The huge 3,400 passenger Carnival Victory was alongside loading up. As it was spring break, there were lots of university students on Ocean Drive in Miami Beach. Ocean Drive is in the Art Deco district, and so there are many buildings in the Art Deco style along the road. Most of these buildings were built between 1923 and 1943, and they are colorful and a joy to behold. The actual beach at the South Beach area is very wide. The part has concrete under it. Offshore, the waters had various watercraft flitting about, including a cigar boat racing past, while overhead an airplane pulled an advertising banner along. There were interesting sights to see walking along the South Beach sidewalks, including people. The restaurants in South Beach are expensive, but a tout at one of the sidewalk restaurants promised us 20% off the menu prices and offered us a buy one giant drink, get a second giant drink free special. So we decided to try it out. However, when we were leaving, our bill did not include the 20% off until we reminded him about it. In any event, it was interesting to watch the passing scene of people and vehicles, including a Lamborghini beside our table. Leaving Miami Beach, we drove north to Orlando, the home of Walt Disney World and numerous other theme parks and attractions. Our first sighting of Mickey and Minnie Mouse was tempered by the fact that I just pulled off the car's door handle, which meant that the driver had to enter from the passenger side and climb over the console. We visited Disney Downtown, where we took a flight in the Characters in Flight balloon ride to get a better view of the area. The balloon is the world's largest tethered helium balloon, and it ascends 400 feet over the village lake, high enough during the 10-minute ride to get a good view of downtown Disney and Disney's Epcot Center geodesic dome in the distance. After the balloon ride, it was time for our lazy cruise down the Sazagula River from downtown Disney to the Port Orleans resorts. The cruise took us out of the hubbub of the busy Orlando area. The scenery along the Sazagula River varies from the Lake Buena Vista Golf Course to the natural forest setting of the Treehouse Villas, and finally the down-south themed Port Orleans resorts. The restaurants in downtown Disney include a Wolfgang Puck Cafe, and the stores include a Harley-Davidson shop with all the bikers' leathers. As it was near St. Patrick's Day, the Irish theme was everywhere, including great green people on stilts. While waiting for a table at the IHOP, we glanced skyward and saw a message being written high in the sky. It was fascinating to watch the Grumman Eggcat crop duster writing its message at 10,000 feet. At this height, the writing can be seen some 35 miles away on a clear day. With the S complete, the final message was clear. It was, "Run to Jesus." The Kennedy Space Center is only about an hour's drive from Orlando, and it is well worth a visit, even though manned spaceflight from there is on hiatus. There is much to be seen at KSC, as it was the launch site for some of the greatest feats in manned spaceflight. The newest exhibit at the KSC Visitor Center is the impressive Space Shuttle Atlantis exhibit. The Space Shuttle Atlantis was retired along with the rest of the shuttle fleet in 2011. Atlantis was built in 1985, and by the time of its retirement in 2011, it had completed 33 space missions. The highlights of Atlantis' career include a repair mission to the Hubble Space Telescope, which included 5 spacewalks, the delivery of several components for the construction of the International Space Station, as well as hauling up a number of satellites. The space shuttle was protected from the searing 3,000 degree Fahrenheit heat of atmospheric re-entry by some 24,000 unique heat tiles individually glued to the orbiter's outer skin. On the 1st of February 2003, the Space Shuttle Columbia was destroyed on re-entry due to damage to the heat tiles caused on launch. The Rocket Garden is a display of rockets from past space explorations, including a climb-in Mercury capsule of the type used during America's first 2 manned space flights. The Saturn 1B was used to launch the Apollo Command Module into Earth orbit in preparation for the Apollo moon landing missions. The Vehicle Assembly Building, or VAB, was built in 1966, and from 1968 to 2011 it was used to assemble the Saturn V rocket and then the Space Shuttle. The VAB is the largest single-story building in the world. With the U.S. manned space program on hiatus, the VAB is waiting for the rollout of NASA's new Space Launch System. The wide crawlerway leads from the VAB out to the launch pads, over which the huge crawler carried the Saturn V and Space Shuttle to their launch sites. The Apollo/Saturn V Museum is a highlight for anyone interested in the greatest achievement of manned spaceflight, namely the moon landing of 1969. The museum houses a restored Saturn V launch vehicle and features other exhibits related to the Apollo moon landing program. Parts of the Saturn V on display come from rocket stages which would have been used for the canceled Apollo 19 moon mission. The Rocket Garden has a walkway leading to a mock-up of an Apollo capsule where the 3 Apollo astronauts were seated for launch atop the giant Saturn V rocket. The museum includes a recreation of the Launch Control Center used for the launch of the Apollo missions, including the original launch consoles. These are the backdrop to a wonderful recreation of the launch of the Apollo 11 moon landing mission. As a family, we watched the TV images transmitted from the moon as Neil Armstrong became the first human being to step on the surface of the moon on 21 July 1969. From Titusville, we could see the moon high over the Kennedy Space Center, some 45 years after the first moon landing, and Neil Armstrong's first step onto the moon's surface when he said,
small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Just down the road from the KSC Visitor Center is the small Mercury Redstone rocket of the type that was used to carry the first 2 American astronauts into space in 1961. Wildlife abounds at the KSC as it is contained within the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge, and so just beside the Mercury Redstone rocket was a pond with a roseate spoonbill and a snowy egret on the hunt. Nearby the KSC is the Tico Warbird Air Museum, which has an interesting collection of ex-military aircraft. Leaving Florida, we return to a snowy Canadian winter.
Take me somewhere nice, to some tired island in your heart called paradise.